listening to the Retail Razor Show, where your expert hosts and their guests cut through the clutter in retail and retail tech to shape the future of retail.
Hello, Retail Razor Show listeners and viewers. Welcome to retail's favorite podcast for product junkies, commerce technologists, and everyone else in retail and retail tech alike. I'm your co-host, Casey Golden.
And I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar. Welcome to part 4 and the final installment in our Shoptalk Live crossover event with Jeff Roster and This Week in Innovation podcast.
Wow, are we really at the last one? This has been so much fun, so many incredible conversations and takeaways. Does it really have to end?
Well, yeah, it does. It does. But we have saved what I think is one of our best, if not the best episode of the season for the last one.
Okay, wait a minute. You've called every episode the best episode of the season as being the one from NRF, where you and Jeff sat down with Vicki Cantrell and Ron Thurston at the end of the Super Saturday retail ROI event. You know, that 10-minute chat that turned into 50 minutes.
Well, okay. Yeah, I did say that, I suppose. I guess I have said that maybe more than once. But funny you should mention that episode, because this episode, our final Shop Talk crossover podcast, is also a conversation Jeff and I had with Ron and Vicki. Think of it as a repeat or a follow-up, if you will, of that NRF discussion. And I have to say, it's this sort of conversation that, makes me so excited to be part of this industry. I'm so thankful for relationships like these with Jeff, Ron, Vicki, and so many others, including you, Casey. It's just unlike any other industry I know.
Oh, you're like a teddy bear. Not true, though. Nothing lights a fire like passion. And that's I know true. Now why you've been testing this recording for the last 3 episodes. But at the risk of being a downer here, if I'm not mistaken, you guys had some challenges making this happen.
Yeah, we did. It turns out we only had one option to record this live and in person at Shoptalk. And that was at the end of the day on, I think it was the second to last day of the show. And it was right when Shoptalk had scheduled a happy hour on the show floor. Rethink Retail was kind enough to agree to let us use their booth space to record. So Jeff and I get there to set up our equipment, right? And guess what happens?
The equipment broke?
Okay, good guess, but no, not quite. Okay. Just as we were about to plug everything in, suddenly loud music starts blaring over the speakers all over the expo hall. You figure it's happy hour, right? So of course, Shoptalk decided we all needed some high energy music to go with our free drinks.
Oh my God, you're kidding me. What would you guys end up doing?
Well, we looked at each other and thought about what any experienced podcaster would do to compensate for that. And then instead, we immediately decided that it was hopeless and we just needed to cancel the whole thing and reschedule.
Grab a beer.
Exactly. Now, of course, I did say this was the only time we could work it out during the show. So we ended up scheduling a recording session remotely for about a week after Shop Talk. So technically, this episode is not live and in-person recorded, but it is still recorded. So we're going to go with that. But it does have the added benefit that, we've got full video for this episode on our YouTube channel. So you actually get to watch us have the discussion, not just listen to it.
All right. Well, that's a pretty good trade-off, I must say. And, we just kind of upped the ante here. So sad you guys couldn't make it work in person. Hope there were some good drinks. But I mean, come on. Of course, you'd expect good music to go with happy hour, right? I mean, you kind of expect, show closes, party's on, right?
Yeah, I guess we should have thought of that. I suppose. But, like I said, had we been experienced podcasters or not the, budding experts we all aspire to be here, we might have planned for that. But I think this worked out in the end either way.
Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's get straight to the recording, not live and in person at Shop Talk, but still a Shop Talk recap with you, Jeff Roster, Vicki Cantrell, and Ron Thurston.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Ricardo Belmar, host of the Retail Razor Show, and I'm here with a good friend, Jeff Roster, host of This Week in Innovation. And you guessed it, this is the last episode in our Shop Talk related series. And if you're watching us on video, yes, you may have noticed we are not live at Shop Talk right now. We much like one of the episodes, if you caught our crossover at NRF where we had some issues and couldn't quite make it work out, we sort of had a little bit of some coordination challenges this time. So we're catching up with each other after the event, but we're here to talk about our thoughts on the Shoptalk event. Jeff, how are you doing today?
Ricardo, I'm doing fantastic. I had a good week's sleep and a lot of time to think about what we're going to talk about today. So I'm actually kind of thinking this is really a cool vibe. Maybe we should do this on every show, like do the final wrap-up show off premise, 2-3 days down the road, a couple good nights sleep. So I'm excited to get into this conversation.
Sounds good. Well, let me go ahead and introduce our familiar guests that we have with us today. We've got Vicki Cantrell and Ron Thurston. Vicki, Ron, how are you two doing?
Great. Very nice to be on a Friday entering in. And it did take I feel like it took a while to get over this trip, like physically. And so I'm all back. So happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, me too. Thank you, Ricardo and Jeff. It's a pleasure. I felt trapped inside Mandalay Bay with no sun and nothing. And I was happy to come back to the West Coast on the tour and be in San Diego because I needed some fresh air.
It's kind of funny. I noticed on the last day I was there thinking, wait a minute, have I seen the outside for the last few days since I've been here? Or have I not even seen daylight?
I actually, one trip over, because I stayed at the Luxor, one trip over, I specifically went outside and went all the way around because I thought, I probably at some point should literally have fresh air. So I literally had to force my way outside.
Right.
Vegas.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Vegas.
Gotta love it. Yeah. Well, So let me start by, before we jump into our conversation here, let's kind of start with summarizing 4 key themes that Shoptalk themselves, the Shoptalk content team, put out there at the end of the show as what they felt were the 4 main themes of the show. And the first is what they termed as seamless stores, which I like to think of this as both a recognition that stores are a focal point of energy right now in retail, and that it's maybe a way to think of this as the successor to omnichannel, and maybe we put that term to rest. So that's theme 1. Theme 2 is about enabling workers and store teams, which is a theme I like to see. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but we talked about that at our conversation at NRF and what we had hoped to hear then about how we're better enabling store teams. So that was theme 2. Theme 3 is shopper engagement, and this is sort of a catch-all, I think, that covers all the interesting technologies that we're all hearing about and talking about now that's impacting the customer experience in any channel, whether it's in stores, digital, wherever it may be. And then the fourth one, which might actually be the most interesting of the 4, Shoptalk calls this changing relationships. And it's a reference to how, on the one hand, you have retailers becoming more and more like a technology provider in that they're now offering services to other retailers and other brands. And that could be, one of my favorite topics that I like to remind Jeff about every chance I get, and that's retail media networks.
Here we go.
It may be things like a Gap offering their logistics network as a service to other retailers. I think, I find this an interesting one because maybe Shoptalk is onto something there, thinking that the business is changing because of how the relationships are changing from the way they have been for decades now. So let's start from there.
I love those 4 themes because they are kind of broken out into technology. And if you remember, we talked in January, Ron had such a good point in that freewheeling conversation that we had was about how do we respect the stores given what they're going through, and how do we get them to do less and understand what their challenges are, and because the customer is back in the stores. And when we think about that, it felt there was a lot of content to address those things while we were at Shoptalk. But I'd like to kind of flip that a little bit and talk about those 4 themes. And what I felt while I was there, I felt like I have no other way to describe it other than it felt like it was a relationship show. For me, the connections, everybody talked about, no matter who you met on the floor, in a booth, at a party, wherever you were, it started with the human connection, and no matter what. And way more time was spent on the human aspects and the human connection before it actually turned into a potential business connection. So it felt very right. It felt very relationship focused. And when you think about that, how it relates to those themes is so true. The relationship with the customer, the relationship and partnerships. It just felt very connected and human. And I love the way they're kind of mapping this out.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll jump in. I agree with you, Vicki. I think it's also the space being like smaller than an NRF. I mean, I think, Vicki, you and I saw each other like 3 times a day, every day. And, like walking by, it's the high five, it's a hug. Oh, have you met this person? Oh my God. Like, let's get a picture. Like, so I think that there's power in the scale of the conference at the same time. But as my first experience at Shoptalk, I would say retail is a relationship business. And because coming from the stores, that's how you build a business. It isn't just about product and a beautiful space. It is very much about relationships with each other first, leading a team. It's relationships with customers. It's with your corporate business partners. It's with your vendors. It's with your mall or your landlords. Like everything we do is about relationships. And those relationships are so important to me. But there was a sense of pride almost in our industry, as much as we all have questions and maybe some pressure to deliver. I felt a sense of pride about the general retail industry at a whole. And that felt really good to me. I left on such a high because of that.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that was your first Shoptalk?
It was my first.
I had no idea. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. How many Shoptalks have you been to, Vicki?
I would say I missed one. I haven't gone to the ones outside of Las Vegas, but I was at the first one and last year and this year. So I would say at least 3, potentially 4.
Okay. It was my second Shoptalk. Last year was my first one. Jeff, was this your first one?
No, this is my first one too. And what I think was interesting about the relationship angle, and I've always, preached that from the get-go. Listen, from a tech perspective, it's a relationship business. It's as big as Mayberry, and there's, Sheriff Andy and I mean, do not screw around in the industry. It's $5 trillion, but it is as big as Mayberry. And it's really cool to hear that. I also wonder, and this is a 180-degree shift for me. I've never, ever been a fan of having anything in Vegas. I just think the shows tend to get lost. I think you have the bleed off. In the old days, quite frankly, used to be, I thought, fairly inappropriate because some of the, the costumes and all that sort of stuff. But I tell you, it was genius to have it at Mandalay Bay. One, I felt like I was back on a college dorm, sort of that whole connection. We joked about not being outside. Well, there was a reason I wasn't outside because everything was convenient. And like, for instance, Kathy's party Sunday night, I looked at the space before I got in there and thought, oh man, it just feels like we're just part of the whole big thing. That couldn't have worked out better. One, it was quiet inside and appropriate for the conversation. But I watched probably 20 people walk by on the way to other things, and so like pop out, pop back in, pop out in. I was at a party, the Coreside party, and actually they had their space, but then there was another party that it was in another space, but the outside was common. And I ended up at somebody else's party and had a great conversation with people that I'd met at another party. And man, you're not going to see that that's the only place probably in the planet you can have all those different venues, world-class food, world-class space, but then have all that interaction. So I have shifted 180 degrees about having something in Vegas.
Yeah, and then we were talking earlier, so there was also, and I think I love this relationship theme because there was Sunday afternoon, right? There was the Retail ROI get together for the March Madness event and watching some of the March Madness games. And I think, Jeff, maybe you were the one who said it, right? Just sitting there, you could just see people you recognize walking by because it was on the way to registration for Shoptalk. People would walk by and say, hey, how you doing?
Somebody's got to own that 2 p.m. space on Sunday because literally at that location. So for people that weren't there, I think the bar we were at was probably 100 yards at max from registration, which meant everyone was walking there. I mean, every startup on the planet should just be right there in that bar or the Starbucks on the other side because you're seeing the whole show.
Yeah.
I'm going to just one more thing on this aspect of relationship. Ricardo, when we were talking earlier and we talked about that, pre-pandemic was experiential. That's what retailers were trying to deal with. And then pandemic became about convenience and figuring out that, and that it's just based on some of these themes and some of the stuff we did see is how important we're back to the experience. And the experience is going to be different. When you're talking about ways of shopping and video and all of the different ways. But the fact that we think about that, for me, convenience and experience is the same because it's based on your connection between the customer and the retailer. It's about the relationship because the experience is the relationship. It's not whether you walk into the store and say, oh, isn't this beautiful? That's not what the experience is. I mean, it better be, okay, or it better be pleasant, but that's not the experience. The experience is the connection of the person that you're being with when you get there. So retail is really about that. And if you have that relationship, then you're going to think this was convenient because you connected.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah, I agree. And the other interesting thing I noticed too, just thinking again about these 4 themes. Now, I wasn't at the earlier Shop Talks before last year, but what I do remember in talking with people who had been there and looking at the content coming out of the conference, I think this really started out as a e-commerce focused,
very much
kind of really heavily digital channels focused to retail, much less emphasis, if any, on what's happening in stores. And and Jeff and I talked to the content team while we were there, and they mentioned that they had gotten feedback from attendees that said, in this post-pandemic world, we really need to talk more about stores. Stores are a real focal point for our business and for how we build those relationships with consumers. The content at the event needs to reflect that. And I think this is one of the things I find most interesting with Shoptalk is how quickly they pivot from topic to topic.
Yeah.
Based on that feedback. When we were chatting at NRF, one of the things we said is, well, we hope we hear some themes around not just how you're enabling store teams, but when you add things to the store, are you just adding or are you taking something away? Are you recognizing that every time you add, there's potentially a burden on the team there and a difficulty in them executing it because it's yet one more thing. It's one more thing to ask for. And I don't know that we heard that at NRF and sessions there very much, but I feel like at Shop Talk, there was definitely, and they said it right in one of the 4 themes about enabling workers, that was definitely a sense. I mean, I even felt that in sessions that were not about the store teams, it came up in the conversation with the speakers on stage. It was almost like a reflex that everyone just recognizing every retailer that was up there, they could have been talking about optimizing their supply chain. And somehow then the conversation led to an impact on the store team and how they had to be aware of that and do something about it, not just let things happen, which was something I hadn't really experienced and seen in this kind of content at other events.
Yeah. I mean, I'll jump in because I started it, but I think my sense from speaking to so many retailers is there's a sense of clarity right now about where revenue is being generated and where their business needs to grow and where they need to make investment. And I think maybe years past, a little bit of like shiny object and what's fun and what's exciting, what keeps us in the press. And this is not a year of the shiny object. This is a year that we need to deliver on the investments that we've made. And that investment for all of them is in people and stores. And if their e-commerce business is not growing at the rates they expected, then the revenue and the profitability comes from the store. And so I do think maybe it's even, 90 days later from NRF, the retailers I'm speaking to is I'm here to find solutions for workforce management. I'm here to find things of a better way to communicate with my teams, to improve productivity, to think about how to make returns easier at the store level. Just all of the things that are actually about delivering results. And you can't deliver the results that any company needs without strong teams in place who are well trained and led and motivated. And I just hope that this is not, or I should say, my sense is not, this was not a temporary idea, that they have now said 80% of our revenue is coming from the store, and that's not changing. And we need to fix this. And I hope my sense is right, given the, the small set of people I spoke to, but that's my feeling right now.
That's quite a phrase, Ron. Not the year of the shiny object. I mean, if you don't put that on Twitter today, I'm 100% stealing that.
Go for it, Jeff.
And I think that's such a profound observation because, I mean, I go back to the old wars, the retail apocalypse wars and all that sort of stuff. For whatever reason, folks trying to bury the store, and Busick and I think, well, I didn't know you at the time yet, Ron, but we were like, how? Help me understand. 90% at the time was 90% of the revenues coming from the store. Why would you try to do that? And I still don't know the answer to that, but I think, maybe it's a post-COVID thing, just a realization how important we are. We are a tribal people. We want to, the best part of human nature is wanting to be in fellowship, in connection with people. Mm-hmm. And so if retail is a people business, it has to reflect that. And our technology needs to reflect that. And maybe we're a little more mature than we were in 2020 and realize the value of people. Yay. I'm pro-human. And so that's a great observation. I think that's a real thing. And I think what's interesting, Ron, when I walked the exhibit hall, which is where I spent all my time, the number of live streamers, the number of folks wanting to do something more in the store, which kind of goes against your idea of like, let's not add to the store, but it's happening. I mean, TikTok was there in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
I forget the names, but a bunch of those
Firework. Yeah.
Firework. They're all. There's this idea that the store is the platform that we can do more with, and I think if we can unleash that creativity that all these folks have and give them the tools, which they're already there. Wow, holy smokes, we're going to have a whole new engagement model.
One interesting thing I heard, and I heard this more than once from different speakers in sessions on this point. Take the live stream maybe was one example, but I heard people saying in a positive way this recognition that if we have more functions and roles needed in the store, there's this recognition that not every store team employee has to know how to do every single role. That there is this idea of specialization. So maybe to your point, Jeff, if live streaming is something that a particular retailer's stores need to support, that doesn't mean every employee needs to be able to jump on a live stream.
Yeah.
It means that maybe the 3 out of 10 or something that are good at it and want to do it, that's now their role, right? They're given that role and they put some focus on that. Maybe there are 3 other employees who would rather be fulfilling BOPUS orders, right, in the back room, and because they can do that faster than the other employees. And it's okay to have this specialization and this recognition that whether it's a store manager level or a district manager, somebody has this awareness, and that we're gearing the operation of the store around this idea that we can specialize in different areas and start building career paths for employees. That's something new that I hadn't heard before.
Yeah. I think what happens in that, or go ahead, Vicki.
Go ahead.
I think I think what to add on to that, the realization that some of that evolution also doesn't have to happen in the store. So you think about live stream, several brands have said, okay, we're going to build a showroom in the office and we're going to live stream from the office by someone who's highly skilled at selling live on camera, which is a very unique and important skill. But at the same time, I'm going to live stream from the office, then I need to have live inventory so that when I click into what I'm selling, I see it's available at my store. I can also buy online, pick up in store. I can reserve. So that the rest of the chain has to work in order for it. You can't just throw off live stream and think someone's going to join your website on Tuesday at 12 o'clock and buy something. You actually have to build the infrastructure behind that, which requires a lot more than signing up for firework. And
Yeah.
so I think that there's a thought process that's deeper now, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't have to just be like, let's add one more thing to the store. And I'm excited about that.
It feels like we're at an inflection point of we all sense it. We've all sensed it for years. And it took a real shot in the arm when we were in the pandemic and online like really spiked. Because as we all know, people have been ignoring that stat of 80% of the sales come from the stores for years. As online has grown a little bit, they still don't look at it. Okay. And now we have this feeling, we can feel the sea change of now it's not stores over online. It's not that. It feels like a melt. Finally feels like the coming together, not the either or. And so with that in mind, I'd like to know from you guys how you see, I know it's an arbitrary thing, but what time moves so fast? With this in mind, what do the next 3 years look like in retail? What's going to be important? What will happen as we continue to meld better, smarter, in better ways? Like the meld really is happening. What's going to look like?
Well, I'll jump in. I think you're right that this meld is finally happening in the way that maybe we all started talking about.
Yeah.
I'll pick a number 5 years ago, right? That now there's sort of a recognition that not only is it happening, but it actually needs to happen for supporting the business. It needs to happen because I go back to one of the things we said in that same time frame was, you know what? Now the consumer is in charge, right? The consumer now has all the power. Remember when that was the new phrase a few years back? So what has that led to now, right? Yeah, people like to repeat it, but maybe didn't believe it. But I think now there's recognition that not only does the consumer still have the power, guess what? They've had it all these past years and you just didn't realize it. So now that you're recognizing it, it's time to do something for that. And the something that you need to do is this melding, because I think all four of us have said it, right? Consumers don't care about channels. You know, there was a lot of jokes made, I think, during Shoptalk about when they said on stage it was time to kill omnichannel and use a different phrase. But I think the jokes aside, maybe the reason why we don't need to use that as a term is because if we're truly going to look at things from the consumer's perspective, there's no such thing as a channel. Right. The whole idea of looking at it, measuring, developing, operating in terms of these channels is absolutely meaningless to the consumer. And what is meaningful to the consumer is, do you have a product I'm looking for? Where can I go get it? How can I get it? How can I learn about it to make sure I'm making the right choice? And can you help me do all of the above?
Yeah.
And sometimes could be on a live stream, could be in a store, might just be the website. Now we're, because of the new developments in AI, right? We actually have meaningful demos about chatbots being helpful, unlike previous generations that maybe weren't so helpful. But there's all these different ways to do that now. And it doesn't matter. I think maybe I might rephrase it to say, it's not that we need to stop thinking about channels. It's that let's recognize the channels don't matter. What matters is, how are you making those things I just listed available to that customer? I like using, Jeff, your example. We mentioned about B&H Photo, and we talked last time at NRF.
Just thinking of them. Just thinking of it.
Because it's like it's the perfect example, right? You needed to know about a product. And maybe it wasn't even a product. I guess I shouldn't say a product. You needed to know about a category, right? To help you decide on a product. And you leverage that live stream. It was a one-to-one, but I'd still call it a live stream for that learning experience. Did it matter to you as a consumer that it was a live stream versus you having been in New York City and walked into the B&H store? No, right? That didn't matter. You got the answer you wanted. You knew what you wanted to buy in the end. And that was the win. So I think that's what I see is finally happening, and we'll see more of it, is the blending is real. And I think the technologies have caught up too. I think maybe one of the reasons, if we're honest, right, it's that there were a lot of technology promises in those past years that we're 80% there, maybe not 100% there. Yeah. And retailers, in fairness, right, couldn't figure out, how do I get that extra 20% to make it right? I think the technology is catching up to that in many ways to make it more doable and easier to do. And the consumer adoption is there. One of the things I joked about with some folks at Shoptalk is last year's big hype was all metaverse, right? And when you look back and say, well, why didn't that necessarily pick up? And I'm not going to say that it's gone, But I am going to say that the promises that were talked about and hyped up at Shoptalk last year didn't materialize because what's the thing that was missing? It was the consumer adoption of it.
Yeah.
The retailers could do everything they wanted on that, but consumers didn't really have a reason to adopt it. Whereas I think now the technologies retailers are looking at don't have that consumer adoption element because it's transparent to the consumer. And I think that's where the focus will go. So if a retailer thinks, I'm not going to worry about channels. I just need to present things in front of a customer in some way. What are all the different ways I can do that? What technologies help me accomplish that? And which ones don't really require the consumer to learn how to use it because they're already using it. It's either, consumers know how to watch a video. You're going to have to teach them how to join a live stream. That's easy. You have to teach them how to go to a website. You have to teach them how to go into a store and do things. That's why Metaverse hadn't picked up yet, because consumers have to learn how to do it. And, back to Ron, your comment, it's not the year for shiny objects, right? So the technology, I think now, and I'll say for now, and let's make it the next 3 years, the technology is going to help with that seamless nature, which I guess I'm back to one of the 4 Shoptalk themes, right? Seamless stores, but maybe expanding it to just seamless experience. That's where it's finally going to go. And we're not going to need to distinguish, is that an experiential retail scenario for the consumer or is it about convenience? It's just there. It's just commerce.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Ricardo, go ahead, Ron.
Go ahead, Jeff. No, go ahead.
So, Ricardo, I know you're going to be shocked to hear this, but sometimes vendors make a lot of buzz or noise or to go back to my old days, hype. The whole metaverse thing is so illustrative because one, I'm a fan because I've trained in simulators as an aviator for 25 years, but that is a massively heavy lift. And to go and scream about something that is a massively heavy lift, we're absolutely going to see that evolve, and it's going to take kind of like RFID, probably 5 to 10 years. And so, what we need to understand, and this is where we as communicators really probably should have been in front of that a lot more, is like, let's encourage innovation, but understand what it takes to innovate. You can't spend $10 trillion overnight. You have to do that in increments, and you have to encourage the innovation and not make fun of it when something like Metaverse doesn't blow up overnight. There's a lot of processes, and the process for innovation has become cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And that's what's also helping. Low code. It's, my podcast partner, Brian, can't say the word low code enough. In every sentence, it's low code because he's a low code guy. But he's sold me on that. When I started at Gartner, terabyte of storage was $1 million. I've got 15 terabytes on my desk. I've got 3 terabytes in my laptop. Yeah. That's a picture in 20 years of the massively almost deflationary cycle or cost of innovation. And that's what we have now. Now we have these tools. Now we have all this stuff. You think about what a customer service channel is going to look like in a year. We're going to be live streaming. We're going to have ChatGPT. It is orders of magnitude different than what we were, just a simple phone call even 5 or 6 years ago. That's how fast we're innovating. And the key, though, that's how cheaply we're able to innovate and to do things. And now the key point, and Ricardo, you're so spot on. You have a customer that now has more power in their hands. That's an old story, but they know how to use it. They know how to embrace it. Yeah. And I think the other thing that people need to understand, that's one thing, Ron, I'm a little concerned about when I hear brands want to maybe try to manage that live stream a little too much. Look at TikTok. Those are not professional videos. Those are getting millions of views. Those are kids with a phone in front of them. And so that expectation for something over managed, I think is going to be a negative more so than a positive. And so that's that part of that innovation where the customer is way ahead of where we are as brands, as retailers. And we're just sort of racing to try to figure out, okay, how much professionalism do we put in? How much do we let people run loose? So exciting. The next 3 years are just going to be insane.
What
fantastic.
You just said has one specific word that is the same and has been the same for the last 10 years, will be the same for the next 10 years. The key is that the consumer knows how to adopt it. Adoption. Yep. We all know that things that can't be or it's difficult to adopt never work, whether it's metaverse or whatever tools. Things that are easy to adopt will always work. And the consumer now has a very different a very different playing field for their adoption that is not in our control, but it benefits us tremendously.
Agreed. I agree with you, Jeff. It's that balance of like, what can I do? Like test, learn, try, get out of it quickly, or, actually this is an important part of the customer journey. I think that what I would add to your question, Vicki, about the next 3 to 5 years is about loyalty. But I look at it in like really two very different ways. I look at it from a store. I look at it from a store team. If we're going to talk about stores, we have to talk about team loyalty and people loyalty. And so the biggest pushback from investment in people that I hear from senior executives is the turnover is too high for me to spend money on these people. Yeah. And my pushback is the reason that they're turning is because you're not investing.
Exactly.
And if we don't put more effort into loyalty at the front lines, we're going to keep repeating the same mistakes, and we're never going to deliver the results that we need if you can't retain the team. So I think there's a huge loyalty front line, and then there's loyalty to customer. So much about first customer data. How do we get new customers? How do we retain that customer? How much does it cost to get that customer? And while I think the conversation about having like a full picture of the customer when they walk into a store is a good conversation, I don't see it live in action. If I'm a very like loyal e-com for one brand, I walk into a location that they have no idea who I am.
Yeah.
And so I think we have to figure out ways to retain loyal customers. That's a channel-less loyal customer.
Yeah.
Because of putting a lot of effort in there, now finding ways. I mean, I was between NRF and Shoptalk, I was at e-tail, which, that was very much about marketing and customer and first party data. And that we have to think about that as a major priority for the next 3 years too. And
great point
from both sides. Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah.
And loyalty is not about points anymore. That's going to be like the word innovation really needs to mean something different. So does the word loyalty. It's not about earn points. It's a very different proposition. I think, Ron, you explained it. You explained it well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it's luxury brands are going through this. Contemporary brands are going through this. People are then, Walmart's writing about a luxury customer buying groceries at Walmart. And how do I retain that customer in a Walmart? But I'm also then buying a handbag at Gucci. Like this, there's no one right way to say how a customer is behaving today. Yet, loyalty to the brands where people have gravitated is how we will sustain great results.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, hearing you say that, I thought of two other examples, like the Sephora at Kohl's. How does Kohl's convert that Sephora customer to shop in the Kohl's? Much like, the Amazon returns in the Kohl's. So giving them a coupon to buy something in the store over the next few days. I think that's the same as your example, Vicki. It's not just about points. Yeah. Points and discounts don't buy loyalty for a brand. But then compare that to the kind of loyalty a brand like Apple has with their customers. Which if you were to pick 2 or 3 top brands that probably reflect the highest loyalty, I think that has to be one of the top 3 right there. And sure, you can point to, the decision to open stores as having been a great piece of that, but it's not really just about Apple stores. It's just everything about them that drives the loyalty. And there's an example of a brand that doesn't give points and doesn't give discounts. That has a lot of super loyal customers, as when we got on here and we all showed off our AirPods Max headphones here. So there's a brand loyalty example that's real.
But because of the relationship experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But they also have frontline team loyalty. That's a brand that invests heavily in stores. Yeah. And training and development and strategy and upskilling them and investing and stretch assignments, going to Cupertino for a year, going to Hong Kong for a year. Like they will do anything to make sure that their teams are happy. Having worked there myself, I can speak to it. Like the loyalty, generally from Apple employees in stores is really high. And you feel that they're proud to work there, and they could not be more excited to sell you $600 headphones. And we all do it. And it's a really good example, Ricardo. Yeah.
Well, Vicki, you started us on that changing relationships theme as maybe the core theme of the 4 that Shoptalk mentioned. I think, Ron, with raising the point about loyalty, you brought us right back full circle again to the changing relationships and how that, if we were to pick one theme of the 4 that Shoptalk said, I think we're sort of maybe indirectly agreeing here that the number one theme was these changing relationships, and which includes both how you build that brand customer relationship, but also the brand employee relationship. And I think we can add in, brand to brand relationship. It really is all about how those relationships are changing and how they remain together for the success of the business.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. So I think maybe that's a good note for us to close on.
Sounds great.
Yeah,
but this is always
pleasure.
so much fun. It's always a great conversation with you
Jeff,
guys.
Your idea is onto something here that we do these after an event a few days or so after the event, so we've all had time to kind of think about and digest it.
Yeah. I do think vendors are going to have a tough decision now. I mean, they're going to have to consider Shoptalk a really legitimate show, and especially if they push into the store aspect of it, it's going to be interesting to see how you allocate your marketing dollars. But I was impressed. I was very impressed with the show.
Me too. Very impressed.
Me too.
Is anyone going to Barcelona?
No.
Pull.
No.
Great city, but too darn close.
If only so.
I would say the same. So no recap of Shoptalk in Barcelona.
In Barcelona. Yep. Well,
maybe we'll cover it from afar. We'll put the Twitter hashtag and then give our analysis afterward.
Right. We'll look for great photos from people who are fortunate enough to be there.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, I guess maybe on that sort of disappointing note for the conversation, we'll wrap it up there. What do you say, Jeff?
Sounds good.
Sound good? All right. Well, Ron, Vicki, as always, a pleasure. Thanks again. We're going to have to keep doing these because this is just too much fun not to.
Yeah, it's great. I love seeing you guys.
Right.
Happy Friday, happy weekend, happy Easter, happy Passover.
Same to you. Same to you. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay.
See you guys.
Bye.
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 Welcome back, everyone. And wow, I loved that conversation. I'm so with you guys on focusing on people. Retail is totally a people business. I might not have been at Shoptalk, but I have to agree with the whole point about changing relationships and focusing on people loyalty, both with store teams and customers, is really where every retailer and brand needs to go.
Yeah, it's interesting how different this discussion went compared to the conversation Jeff and I had with Christina Gustafson and Ben Miller in part 1 of the series. In that discussion, we really dug into all the main trends at the show. And both Christina and Ben really gave us some amazing details and viewpoints on how those 4 trends were manifesting in the industry and how people talked about it at the show. And they were totally right about those trends. And of course, I have to put a plug in here for retail media networks. And that's for you, Jeff. If you're out there listening, I couldn't resist to bring that up just so you're aware. But when Ron and Vicki both brought us to that intersection of technology and people, it nicely outlined how it really does come down to people, no matter what you do with the technology in retail. And I have to say, that's what made this one of my favorite conversations on the podcast yet.
Well, I really appreciate you guys for, always bringing it back to center, amplifying the importance of relationships. It's really been with a heavy heart over this pandemic, just kind of seeing clienteling turn into email marketing and diluting the magic of these relationships and that sales process, or beyond the sales process, like the brand experience. Coming from the luxury side, it's so much more than a sales associate, and shopping alone just hasn't hit the same note. So I'm just really excited to see so much focus go into the people, the relationships, the technology that needs to be made for people to scale their workspaces, digitization, not just replacement and AI. AI, Bart and I are not getting into conversations about shoes, pants, jackets, dress, nada.
That's not happening.
That's
not happening. Yeah, I really think Vicki nailed it in her comment when she said, the relationship is the experience at the end of the day. That's what it's all about. And as often, I mean, let's face it, we talk about technology on this show all the time, but we can't lose sight of why are we talking about technology? It's to help augment that people relationship, not replace it. And that, I think, is really where this conversation really got to. And I'm really excited that that's where it ended up.
Me too. I'm slightly biased, but thanks. I really like how you guys brought this together with that Vicki called the melding of online and stores. Of course, I'm a store girl, right? But I like built some of the first e-commerce stores. And I just love talking about like store teams, how interacting with a stylist or a personal shopper makes a completely different and unique experience, from discovering products to just the buying process. Vicki just nailed it by saying that the experience is the relationship and what that melding digital and physical is all about. When retailers do it right, services are significant.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Jeff added a great point there too about how the technology has to enable this, not compete with it, not make it more complicated. It's that whole adoption point that we all talked about, and why I think we all agree that the current tech trends, like everything about generative AI right now and anything else that took over the conversation at this year's Shop Talk, really have an advantage over the metaverse trend from last year's show, because it comes down to consumer adoption. If consumers can benefit from a technology without adopting anything new, or whether it's a new habit or the technology on the consumer side of it, then that's a winner for retailers. If consumers have to adopt something, it's going to take a lot longer for them to complete that adoption and to make an impact on the retailer's business. It doesn't mean it won't happen. I think to Jeff's point about metaverse, I think we'd all agree it's going to happen. It will happen. It's just not happening right away. It might not happen in less than a year's time. It's more of a long-term play. But some of these other technologies that were trending this year, they have an immediate impact.
100%. I mean, so many of times technology ends up taking the work out of business or the process and puts all of the work on the consumer. They have to do the heavy lifting. And I think metaverse is definitely suffered from that, perspective that you just spoke of. But then again, like Web3 has a better chance of making a difference because it's easier to lift on the consumer side than the metaverse. The adoption will come from loyalty programs, as an example, exclusive and unlockable content. Look at Starbucks' new OSSY program and what you and Jeff talked about with Max from Z-Blocks back at NRF.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I mean, although I have to admit, I've totally failed in my efforts to unlock the first NFTs in the Starbucks program. I didn't get enough points to get the early drop.
All right. Well, we'll do a little one-on-one offline.
Yeah, I may need your help on that.
Be offline on the blockchain.
Yeah. Okay. I guess that maybe with your help I can do better next time. But I guess on that totally disappointing note, I think this only means one thing for this episode, right, Casey?
Indeed, it's that time to wrap up, and I have to say, I agree, it's the best one ever. So we're gonna wrap up this Shop Talk crossover series with Jeff Roster, and This Week in Innovation. It's been good.
It has.
If you enjoyed this season's shows, especially our just completed podcast crossover miniseries, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Remember to smash that subscribe button in your favorite podcast player so you don't miss a minute. Plus, remember, you can watch us, not just listen, on our YouTube channel, and like and comment there too. Share your thoughts. If you want to know more about what we talked about today, including a full transcript of this episode, take a look at the show notes for handy links and more deets. I'm your co-host, Casey Golden.
If you'd like to connect with us and share your thoughts on this season and the crossover series, follow us on Twitter at KCC Golden and Ricardo_Belmar, or find us on LinkedIn. Be sure and follow the show on Twitter and LinkedIn too at Retail Razor for the latest updates. And watch for our season finale episode coming soon with a truly special guest host that's going to turn things around and ask us questions for a change. But for now, I'm your host, Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
And remember, there's never been a better time to be in retail if you cut through the clutter. Until next time, this is the Retail Razor Show.